In today's video, I want to discuss whether or not it's a real possibility that the Ottawa Senators might trade their captain, Erik Karlsson. If so, where's the most likely landing spot and what would the return be? We're going to discuss that coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams. So if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell. So considering the rumors of Erik Karlsson possibly being moved or continue to persist, I thought it was necessary that we discuss that here again on this channel. In the past, we did another video where we talked about trade rumors probably back 3 or 4 weeks ago, discussing whether or not this was a real possibility. The whole time really that these rumors have come up, I've dismissed it as not likely going to happen, and I'm still kind of in that camp that it's very unlikely. However, it still keeps coming up, and the main rumors that come up when Karlsson's name is mentioned is Tampa. Obviously, a lot of people seen how he played with Hedman and Stamkos at the All-Star game in that 3-on-3 tournament, and they obviously played very well together, and it just kind of got a lot of people talking. Now, I do believe that Tampa would have real interest in Erik Karlsson, and really, I don't blame them. I would think just about any team, if they felt Erik Karlsson was really available, that they'd be looking at their roster, talking to the Senators, saying, okay, what's it going to take? Who wouldn't want this guy on their team? I mean, he's an offensive superstar, one of the top defensemen in the league, but you could argue this year, he's certainly not having a great season defensively. If you look at Erik Karlsson, when he first came into the league, he was an offensive superstar and a defensive liability. And as time went on, he really worked hard at improving his game. And as of probably even last year, you could argue that he was one of the better, not only offensive, but defensive defensemen as well. He was blocking shots at a high rate, and he was really a beast back there on defense. But this year, it's just not the same. Now, I realize he went through a major surgery in the offseason, and it took him a long time to probably get his conditioning back to where it was needed to be, and as well to get used to how his ankle now feels after that reconstructive surgery he had last summer, and I realize all that. But to me, a lot of the errors in Erik Karlsson's game have been mental this year. If you look at his play, and I watched a lot of the Sens games, a lot of his defensive mishaps are really mental errors. They're not cases of him not being as mobile. They're not cases of him not skating as hard. You know, they're not cases of any of that stuff. He just doesn't, I don't know what it is, but Erik Karlsson is not the same player he was that helped this team get to the Eastern Conference Final last year, and I don't know what the reasons are. Early in the season, I said, okay, you know, his conditioning's not where it's at because of the type of injury that he had. He was not able to train like he normally would in the offseason, so obviously that impacted him. He did need time to get used to how his new ankle felt after everything was surgically repaired in there. He did say himself a big chunk of his ankle bone was removed, and it was really kind of hard to get used to with the new way it felt. So I knew that was going to take some time. So really for the first number of games, even the first half of the season, I really cut the guy a lot of slack in his defensive woes and just not being quite the same player. But as time goes on and game after game, and you keep seeing these defensive blunders, I can't help but wonder, maybe his head and his heart is just not in it like it was before. I don't know what it is, but he's not the same player. So is it a real possibility they could explore a trade for this guy? Honestly, I think it is. I think Pierre Dorion has to listen. I don't think he has a choice. If you look at where this team is at in the standings compared to how it's done before, he has no choice but to listen. Now, obviously, you need to tread very carefully. We're talking about a franchise player and a player who would take another contender, put them over the top to win the Stanley Cup. And based on his contract, they could have him for this year and next before they have to worry about that mega extension that he's going to be looking for. So, is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? I still think it's not very likely, but there is a chance. And I think Pierre Dorion has no choice but to listen. Now, when it comes to the rumors, the main team that keeps coming up is Tampa. Obviously, as we know, Tampa is a very strong team, and they seem to be going all in for a run at the Stanley Cup this year. They've come close a few times in recent years since Stamkos has been there, and they haven't gotten it done. So obviously, Tampa is going to want to go hard after the Cup this year. They've got a lot of their top guys under contract for a number of years here, and they're in their window to win is certainly just opening up, in my opinion. So I think they would probably really like to have Karlsson back there. We'll see if there's any truth to these rumors, but I think that at the very least, there is interest. Now, if that were to go down, what would the return be? Now, if you're Pierre Dorion, you have to look at this as you need to win this deal. This is a make or break for this franchise for a number of years, and your job is likely on the line. Now, at the same time, the way things work in Ottawa, I can guarantee you Pierre Dorion would not make an Erik Karlsson trade without having Eugene Melnyk sign off on the deal. So if Eugene Melnyk signs off on the deal, then you know that Pierre Dorion is not going to end up losing his job over the trade unless it plays out poorly over the next season or two, because he was just given a 3-year extension. But it's still, you know, this is a trade that you'd have to win if you're going to make this big of a magnitude of a deal. So if you take a look at Tampa's roster, for me, you have to start with Mikhail Sergachev. If you're going to lose a top offensively minded defenseman, then you need a similar type player coming back. Mikhail Sergachev is that guy. He's young, he's gifted, he's very offensive, and in a few years' time, he may be able to rival an Erik Karlsson in what he can accomplish and do for a team on the ice. So for me, he absolutely has to be included. You obviously are going to want some other players and prospects. Now, another rumor that I've seen is that, now we'll see if there's any truth to this, and we may or may not ever know, but one of the conditions on Ottawa's part is if you want Karlsson, you need to take that toxic contract that belongs to forward Bobby Ryan. Obviously, a lot of people love Bobby. He's a great guy, but he ain't worth the money that he's getting paid, and if they can find a way to move that contract on from a business perspective, they've got to get it done. So if you want Karl, you got to take Bobby too. That's what I've seen online this morning. That came from a source close to the Senators from, I think it was Terry Marcotte, who works for the CTV News in Ottawa. So obviously, if we're looking at that, if that were the deal, Karlsson and Ryan to Tampa, obviously, like I mentioned, Sergachev's going to be a starting point. The other player you're going to zone in on is Braden Point. He could easily be a top #2 center for this club. Between him and Duchesne, you almost have a 1A, 1B situation. He's incredibly fast. He can score. He can be a playmaker. I mean, you'd have to think that they would be going after Sergachev and Point. If you take a look at a lot of their other forwards that are obviously, you know, Kucherov and Stamkos aren't going anywhere for sure. So if you take a look beyond that, you've got Vladimir Nemestikov, you've got Tyler Johnson, Andre Palat. You know, they're probably the next 3 guys that are your top players. To be honest, as a Sens GM, I'd be hesitant to take any of them. As much as they're playing well and having a good season, if you look at Nemestikov, you can't help but wonder, is he putting up those points because of who he's playing with? If you look at his career statistics, he's having a career season, and it's just really hard to say if they could duplicate that going forward, playing with different guys in Ottawa. Not to put a knock on Nemestikov, he's a great player, but you see so many cases of he's a great player in that situation. Change the situation, you may change the production. Hard to say, but I'd have concerns over that. I'd also have concerns if you look at Johnson and Palat. You know, obviously I'd have concerns about could they fit in Ottawa and could they play well. Tampa and Ottawa did a deal before where the Senators traded goalie Ben Bishop to Tampa, and who did they get back? A promising young rookie having a fantastic season named Corey Conacher. Well, we all know how that worked out. Conacher bombed in Ottawa, bounced around, played in Europe. Now he's back in Tampa. He's doing okay in a smaller role, but he never really worked out. He never turned into the superstar he was, looking like he was going to turn into be. And to be honest, he was another guy. He was getting top minutes with top guys like Stamkos. Those guys can make anybody look good. And you have to tread carefully with that. And I have concerns that Nemestikov could be the next Conacher if he's moved away from that team. As long as he stays in Tampa, I don't have any concerns. He'll put up good numbers. So for me, you're looking at Sergachev, Braden Point, and you're looking at their other prospect pool. I mean, they've got other guys in their system that are pretty solid. You got Taylor Radish, you got Boris Kachuk, you got Brett Howden. You know, obviously we're talking about some draft picks. Karlsson, especially if you include Ryan. Now, if you include Ryan, that is going to diminish the return a little bit just because of the contract. But if you could get Sergachev, Point, and another prospect or a couple of combination of other prospects or picks in return, that probably wouldn't be too bad a deal for Ottawa. But I have doubts that Tampa is going to want to give up that kind of a haul to the Senators to land Karlsson. I mean, really, if they've been watching them closely this year, they got to have concerns over his defensive play. I mean, I don't care how much offense he can create. You know, like really, like he's been as much of a liability as anybody on that team this year. You know, he's definitely caused more goals against than he has goals for. He's not having a great season. He's not really doing himself any favors when it comes to this massive contract that he's going to be expecting at the end of next year. So it's really hard to say, but if the deal does get done, I think Tampa's the most likely landing spot. I think the Senators could get a pretty good haul of prospects in return and make that team a lot younger and faster. And if they included a guy like Sergachev, and depending on where the Senators end up drafting in 2018 here, I mean, we got a stacked first round of draft class coming up this summer. If they were fortunate enough to win the lottery, for example, and they could draft Rasmus Dahlin, well, between Dahlin, you bring back Sergachev, you got Thomas Chabot, you know, you got a pretty awesome young defense there. Even if they don't get fortunate enough to draft Dahlin, if they end up, they're likely going to end up no lower than 5 or 6. You know, they might be able to land a player like Filip Zadina, Brady Tkachuk, maybe Svechnikov. There's other defensemen like that are going to be at the top 5 or 6 spot as well. So, I mean, you know, they have to take that into consideration. But as of right now, they don't know that. They may want to wait and let the season unfold and see where things go with the draft before they pull off a deal like this. You know, they keep saying their first priority is to sign Erik Karlsson, and they can't really formally engage in conversation about that until the summer. So depending on what the asking price is, and it's believed that he's going to want to be the highest paid player in the league, I mean, personally, I wouldn't give him that contract. Erik Karlsson is a franchise player. He's an awesome guy. Like he's changed Ottawa's fortune substantially during his career. But I'm not going to be paying Erik Karlsson more money than the top player in the league right now, like a Connor McDavid. Does he deserve a big raise? Absolutely. But I mean, when you're talking 7 or 8 years on a guy who just had a big surgery, it's very, very risky. I mean, as much as they don't want to lose Karlsson, you've got to be careful, and you have to look at what's best for this team going forward. So maybe a trade might actually be the best thing. It's really hard to say. But at this point in time, I think Pierre Dorion needs to listen to all offers. And if an offer comes through that absolutely just knocks his socks off, then he needs to pull the trigger and do what's best for this franchise. I'm not saying they should trade Karlsson. I mean, I'm a huge Erik Karlsson fan. I think he should stay in Ottawa. I think ideally that's the best situation. They can build around him. He's still got a lot of good years left if he can stay healthy. But at the same time, they got to do what's best, and they have to look at his contract, and they have to do what's best for the organization. So just really hard to say. But if a deal gets done, expect him to go to Tampa, and I think the return could be quite sweet for the Senators. So certainly leave some comments down below. What would you think about Karlsson being traded to Tampa? Do you think there's any possibility that could happen? And what do you think the return should be? Leave some comments down below and give me your thoughts. Don't forget as well to follow us on social media. You're going to see our Twitter handle on the screen right here. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, and all those social media accounts are linked down below in the description, so check those out. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.